The ancient Indian republics like the Vrijis and the Shakyas, which flourished in the 6th century BC, were situated in eastern India. These republics, with the rise of monarchies in Ganga plain, disappeared eventually. And we find that from the Mauryan period onwards, we have no or little reference of these republics. But the disappearance of these republics doesn't mean that there was no other republics present in other parts of India, because we find that in the northern part of the Indian subcontinent, there were republics that were known and they survived up to the Gupta period. So in this video, we will talk about these republics of northern part of the Indian subcontinent. So most of our reference comes from Panini's Ashtadhyayi and from the coins of these republics that were situated in this region. From Panini's Ashtadhyayi, we learn that most of these republics were situated in the region of modern-day Punjab and Haryana. And Panini, in his Ashtadhyayi, calls these republics Ayudhjivi Sangha. That means those who live by the profession of arms. And these republics, we learn from Panini that these republics were renowned for their warriors. Now the fact that we have only two major sources, that is Panini's Ashtadhyayi and the coins of these republics, means that we do not have enough information about the political structure and other historical details about these republics. So that is why our discussion will mainly revolve around these two sources, and we will also use some other minor sources where these republics are mentioned. Having said that, let's start our discussion with the Madrakas. So the Madrakas are mentioned in Mahabharata, and from other sources we learn that the Madrakas occupied the region between the river Ravi and Chenab. And from these sources we learn that their capital was the city of Sakala. The city of Sakala was the same city which during the period of the famous Indo-Greek king Menander became an important center for Indo-Greek power. Some historians claim that during the period of King Porus, when Alexander invaded, these Madrakas were part of King Porus's kingdom. Although we do not have any coins and other inscriptions of these Madrakas, we know these Madrakas existed because of Samudragupta's inscription. In this inscription, we find that the Madrakas are mentioned as one of the kingdoms which accepted the overlordship of Samudragupta. And it is from Samudragupta's inscription, some historians argue that the Kushanas subjugated these Madrakas. And with the decline of these Kushanas, the Madrakas once again became independent. Now, having discussed the Madrakas, let's move southward towards the territory of Yaudheyas. We find that these Yaudheyas were the southern neighbor of the Madrakas, and they dominated the region of modern-day Punjab and Haryana. The name Yaudheya appears in Mahabharata, and in Mahabharata it is the name of one of Yudhishthir's sons. Now, from this fact, some scholars have argued that the Yaudheyas claimed descent from this son of Yudhishthir. And the name Yaudheya also appears in Panini's Ashtadhyayi, where they are described as Ayudhjivi Kshatriyas. That means Kshatriyas whose profession was war. Now, when we look at the territory which the Yaudheyas control, we find that it was the Rohtak region which was one of their important center. We can say this because it is from this region we have found several molds of Yaudheya coins. And it is from Yaudheya coins we learn that the Yaudheyas worshipped god Kartikeya, who is depicted in several Yaudheya coins. Now, when we analyze the Yaudheya coins, we find that the first Yaudheya coins appears in 2nd century BC, and from 2nd century BC they continue up to 1st century BC. Now, this means that in these 100 years the Yaudheyas flourished. Now, from 1st century BC up to 2nd century AD, that means in the 3 centuries onwards, we find that there is no Yaudheya coins that are found in this region. So we can say that during this period, that is the period between 1st century BC up to 2nd century AD, the Yaudheyas were subjugated by another power. Now, when we look at the history of northern India during this period, we find that this period was the period when this region was controlled by first the Shakas and then the Kushanas. So this means that it was the Shakas and then the Kushanas who subjugated the Yaudheyas. And we find that with the decline of the Kushan power in the 2nd century AD, the Yaudheyas again re-emerged. And this can be seen from the Yaudheya coins that starts reappearing from 2nd century AD onwards. Now what is interesting is that from Sunet near Ludhiana, archaeologists have found a clay seal of the Yaudheyas. This clay seal has a representation of a bull and a legend, Yaudheyanam Jayamantra Dharanam, which means the seal of the Yaudheyas who were in possession of the victory charm. Now some scholars believe that this clay seal commemorates a great victory that the Yaudheyas won against the Kushanas. And from this conclusion, there is a argument that the Yaudheyas dealt the final blow against the Kushan power in the eastern Punjab region. Apart from the Kushanas, it appears from the Girnar inscription that the Yaudheyas were also a great enemy of western Kshatraps. In the Girnar inscription, Rudraman boasts that he had destroyed the Yaudheyas who call themselves heroes among all the Kshatriyas. Now this claim of Rudraman should not be taken seriously because we do not have any reference to suggest that the western Kshatraps under Rudraman were able to annihilate the Yaudheyas. We can say this because it is from Samudragupta's inscription from Prayag we learn that the Yaudheyas were one of the kingdoms who accepted the overlordship of the Guptas. Now let's talk about the Kunindas. In the foothills of Shivalik bordering the Yaudheyan territory was situated the Republic of Kuninda. Now like the Yaudheyas, the Kunindas are also mentioned in Mahabharata. And from the Kuninda coins, we have one name which has survived, and this is Amog Bhuti. Now some scholars argue that this Amog Bhuti was one of the chiefs of the Kunindas. Now archaeologists have found that there are two types of Kuninda coins. The first are the silver Kuninda coins where two scripts are used. The first is Brahmi and the second is Kharoshthi. Whereas the copper Kuninda coins have only one script, which means Brahmi. And this can be explained from the fact that the silver coins of the Kunindas were used for trade and they traveled in regions where Kharoshthi was used, whereas the copper coins was mainly used for local circulation. So that is why Brahmi was used for the copper coins. Now leaving the Kuninda territory, when we move southwards, we enter the territory of the Arjunayanas. And as their name suggests, they probably claim descent from Arjun. Now like the Yaudheyas, we find that the Arjunayanas first appeared in 2nd century BC. And with the rise of Shakas and then the Kushanas, these Arjunayanas lost their independence. But with the decline of the Kushan power in the 2nd century AD, these Arjunayanas again re-emerged as a serious power. Another interesting fact about the Arjunayanas is that although they are described as accepting overlordship of Samudragupta in Samudragupta's Prashasti of Prayag, we find that the Arjunayanas had survived up to 6th century AD. We can say this because in Varahamir's Brihat Samhita, they are described as one of the kingdoms in North India. Now, when we leave the Arjunayana territory and move southwards, we enter the territory of the Malwas. Now, the Malwas who controlled the territory around the Jaipur region were not originally from this area. The Malwas earlier occupied the territory between the confluence of Chenab and Ravi. Now, some scholars have also argued that the Malay of the Greek accounts, who are described as one of the kingdoms who fought Alexander when he invaded India, was actually the Malwas. And it was probably in the 2nd century BC, with the rise of Indo-Greek power, the Malwas left their territory and moved to the region of Rajasthan. Now, the Malwas, who occupied this region around Jaipur, again became an important power with the decline of the Kushan Empire, because we find that it was probably in the second half of 2nd century AD that the Malwas were able to extend their empire up to the Udaipur region. From Samudragupta's inscription, we learn that the Malwas accepted the overlordship of the Guptas. And we find that in the 4th century AD, the Olekaras, who were the feudatories of the Guptas, probably they belonged to a Malwa family. And it is from this we can say that the Malwa region, which constitute parts of central and western India, probably gets its name. So when we look at the broad history of these republics, we find that it was probably with the decline of the Mauryan power, these republic first emerges. And with the coming of the Shakas and then the Kushanas, these republics were subjugated by these powers. This becomes clear when we look at the Rabatak inscription of Kanishk, where Kanishk boasts that he subjugated the whole realm of the Kshatriyas. Most scholars believe that the Kshatriyas, which Kanishk is talking about in this inscription, were probably the Kshatriya Gana or Kshatriya republics of northern India that are also mentioned in Panini's Ashtadhyayi. And from this Rabatak inscription, it becomes clear that with the rise of Kanishk was able to subjugate these republics. And we find that with the decline of the Kushan power, these republics again became independent and they prospered. It was only with the rise of the Guptas, and particularly in the reign of Samudragupta, that we find that Samudragupta was able to again subjugate these republics. And as the Prayag Prashasti tells us, these republics accepted the overlordship of Samudragupta. So this was the broad history of warrior republics of ancient India. Now you can watch this video where I talk whether we should call ancient Indian republics democracy or not. Thank you for watching.